After a day of successes and a night of cleanup, we are back at the track bright and early for day one of the Global Time Attack Finals. For those of you unfamiliar with this event, it is the final event of the Global Time Attack season, and it takes place at Buttonwillow's 13 clockwise layout, and it is, for all intents and purposes, the gold standard of North American time attack racing. Every year, for nearly 20 years, drivers have gathered here at this track at the second week of November to put down their fastest times. I've attended as a spectator in the past, but this will be my first year driving, and although the Ferrari is still only in its testing and setup phase, I'm excited to get out there and turn laps with the best of them. So let's see what we can pull off. Our day picks up right where we left off, a final bit of cleanup and reassembly following our adventure off track yesterday afternoon. Bright and early is, of course, the mandatory drivers meeting where we're briefed on how the day will go and what the structure of the event is actually like. A total of 53 drivers are competing across 5 classes, and we have accidentally placed ourselves in the Unlimited class, which is without question the fastest and most competitive of them all. But that's okay, because in reality, we aren't here to win anything this weekend. We're just here for development and seat time. In reality, we just finished this car up, and now it's time to figure out how to make it go fast. It's going to require a lot of work to get there, but what better time and place than with all of my friends at one of the best events of the year. Throughout practice, we were timing the car with our own AIM Solo 2, but now that it's time for competition, we're going to be running one of GTA's transponders. This will make sure that our lap times are recorded successfully and included in everyone's overall results. Following the cleanup and once-over of the engine bay last night, everything should be ready for prime time today. And as far as the car's running gear, we're going to keep the same damper settings we ended with, and I'm going to keep the same set of Falcon RT660s on the car given that they still have a lot of life left in them. We've got a fresh set we can use tomorrow morning for the first sessions once we get one more full day of driving in when I know I can put down the best lap I'm capable of so far. We've got our notes taken and our baselines written down, so it's finally time to get out on track for the first session of the day. It's when the air and track are coldest, and it's usually when guys put down their best lap. However, that's really only for a well-developed car, and we're not quite there yet. However, despite being suited up and just moments away from heading out on track, I noticed one critical problem. We were missing a bolt from one of our motor mounts. How it came out is anyone's guess. We did put solid engine mounts into the car, which has increased vibration transfer from the engine to the chassis, and that's likely the culprit, as opposed to going off because there wasn't too much turbulence as a result. But either way, we lost the bolt, and we've got to get one back in there before we can go out on track. There is, though, a little bit of a problem at hand. The bolt hole and the mount don't really want to line up with each other, likely due to the fact that everything else is still hooked up to the engine, thus putting a bit of load and strain on it. All of the other mounts are in place, and this particular mount is the first one that gets bolted in when the engine goes into the car. So it was a bit of a fight to pull this off. However, I was lucky that Sevens Only Racing up at the front of the track had the right hardware in stock, so I wasn't forced to walk the paddock asking everybody who might have spare bolts in their trailer. With a helping hand, I was finally able to get everything lined up and mounted in place. With a lock washer installed this time, fingers crossed it won't come back off. Given that we lost one piece of hardware, I spent a bit of time making sure nothing else had come loose before putting the car back down on the ground and getting ready to make it out just in time for the second session. And if there was a silver lining to missing the first, it's that my girlfriend and friends all made it up to the track in time for the second, meaning they didn't miss any of the action. As I suited up to go out, Riley and his Trans Am had just come in from their second session, unfortunately having experienced an off. So now it was his turn to clean up the mountain of dirt he had brought in with him, while I go out and do my best to keep all 4 tires on the tarmac. Following our on-track video in the last episode, a lot of you guys had the same handful of questions. So I figured I'd do my best to address them. The first one is, why am I rev matching and clutching on my downshifts? And the answer is really simple. I don't have a downshift rev match program set up, and I don't want one. It's a good way to induce a lot of extra wear and tear on the transmission when my heel-toe game is just fine. The second is, a lot of you guys want to know why I'm lifting on my upshifts given that we set up flat shifting while we were in Australia. No, it's not the flat shift setup that caused the first transmission to fail. But given that I do want to take this transmission apart and inspect it to make sure everything's working properly, I'm disabling flat shift for the time being to reduce the things that can contribute to dog ring wear. Our first session out proved to be quite an improvement over our sessions yesterday. We ran back-to-back 158s despite having traffic and passes on both laps. With clean laps, that time's going to drop rather rapidly. But as some of you guys have continued to point out, that's still a relatively slow lap time for a car of this nature, and yeah, I agree. Given that there's no critical design flaws in what I've built, this thing should run in the 140s in the future, and I have every intention of getting it there. But to reiterate, this is a recently finished project, and it's one I'm working diligently just to get comfortable in. I might not highlight every change we make, but every session out on track yields multiple changes, tweaks, and adjustments both behind the wheel and underneath the car in order to make it drive better every time we take it out. And to that end, after the closure of our first session, I pulled in where the team took tire temps and pressures to make sure everything is functioning correctly. Because, for example, we're still early enough in this project that we're just trying to make sure that our tires are getting fully up to temp and that the pressures are correct once they're hot. But while there's a lot of information we can acquire once we bring the car in from the track, and there's a lot of information I can acquire while driving the car, there's also a lot to be learned from digital data. And that's where my friend Will really comes into play, because he's a master at analyzing everything our AIM Solo 2 can tell us. By taking the data from some of my 1 minute and 58 second laps and comparing it over top of some of his 1 minute 52 second laps in his ISF, he's able to tell where we're losing time, where we're gaining time, and where we can make the biggest difference on the track. He's able to tell by the G-forces that we're generating through acceleration, braking, and steering alone where we can find time. For example, our acceleration clearly is great. The car makes traction and it flies like a bat out of hell. And through the turns, we're generating more than 1.5 Gs, which is pretty reasonable, although there's still more on the table. But where there's a ton of room is in the braking zones. I'm braking way too early, and the brakes have a lot more to give. Will is confident that if we don't change anything else on the car, and we don't improve my driving in any other way, that we can find 4 full seconds in my lap times. Not to mention the fact that I'm leaving a ton of time on the table coming through and out of the S's, and I can carry a lot more speed through bus stop. My goal of running a 155 in this car is easy. Long term, I want to set my sights on the high or mid 140s. But baby steps here. For now, let's just keep trimming our times down and working on learning how to drive this car effectively, starting with those braking zones. In this session, I saw immediate improvements. Trusting that I could brake later and harder, I went out and ran a 156.3 on my very first flyer. And that's 2 full seconds faster than we have actually recorded this thing going at any point so far. But to be honest, with every successive lap, I'm getting more comfortable and confident, and it was pretty clear that with another flyer, I think I could shave yet another 2 seconds off that time. There's a ton on the table, and it's becoming abundantly clear how to find it with this car. After snagging that 156, I came up behind a 911 on a cool-down lap, and it took getting through a couple of turns before I was able to pass him when he moved over. As a result, my second lap was a bit of a wash. But following Will's advice of gathering as much useful data as possible, I wanted to keep the pace of the lap up even if it wouldn't make for a good time. I figured I could still learn through these laps and set myself up well in corners, compile it all for the next lap, and put down a real heater, especially now that the tires were getting hot. But as luck would have it, that was not in the cards for me. I made it through Cotton Corners and then Grapevine, but in Bus Stop, disaster struck. It took a moment to figure out exactly what had happened, but it was abundantly clear the engine in the Ferrari had blown up. I knew it was critical to get off the track as soon as possible as to not drag oil across the whole surface, but it was also through one of the highest speed and most likely to wreck places on the track, and I didn't want another car to hit me. But eventually I made it to the truck stop turn, pulled off, and had plenty of time to figure out exactly what my fate was going to be. Now, don't get me wrong, blowing up an engine is heartbreaking. I was furious that it had happened, but more than being upset at the failure, I'm upset because I've been making time. I'm getting faster. Every session goes better and better, and yeah, this is part of what comes with racing and especially trying to develop a brand new car, but man, did it come at the worst possible time, because there's so much time left on the table and it's mine for the taking, and I want it so badly. But there's nothing I can do to change it. All I can do is embrace that, yeah, this is racing at its core. Shit happens.
Done. Super off on the sea. We're about a minute
What's the word?
away from letting them go out on track. We're just waiting for the safety vehicle to get off.
Whatever it costs.
Lift the head or something?
No, there's a huge hole in the bottom of the oil pan, so I don't know why it blew up,
no.
but it's very blown up.
Oh, buddy. You look fucking good out there.
Dude, yeah,
we
we
were saying.
Think
You're
you can
hauling
make it
ass.
for the next session?
Yeah, let's put it back together.
Who's got JB Weld?
Yeah, we just plug the
With the car up on the trailer and able to see underneath it, it was abundantly clear the Ferrari threw a rod. It threw that rod right through the billet oil pan, taking out more than just the engine, but a lot of expensive associated parts as well. So the question, of course, is why did the engine throw a rod? That part we don't know yet, and we're going to have to dive into it once we get the car back to the shop and we're able to start tearing things apart, and when we can pull data from our ECU and take a look at what might have happened. We didn't trigger any of the fail-safes on our ECU, so it will require a bit of forensic work. For the curious, we were running the car on low boost at only 13 psi, which is not much to ask of an engine like this one, and it's only got a handful of hours on it in total, so we're nowhere near the end of its lifespan. This is, by every measure, an unexpected failure. And I know some of you in the peanut gallery are already ready to type out, well, I thought you got this Honda motor for reliability, you should have just stuck with a Ferrari engine. But these are the teething pains of building a balls-out race car, and I'd much rather replace a blown-up Honda motor than a Ferrari V8. Once we get this engine pulled out and we're able to take a look at what might have caused the failure, we'll be able to revise whatever went wrong and prevent it from happening in the future, fingers crossed. All I can say at the moment is that there are multiple holes through the pan and the block where there shouldn't be any holes at all. But we'll dissect this as soon as we get it back to the shop. The 55 is no problem at the moment. Well,
At the moment.
tough at the moment, but
No problem next time.
How fast did we
Next
push
time.
around?
next time might be a while from now. Okie doke. Day's over. Really not any better luck than Australia I guess better luck in that we got competition laps in before we broke it. Worse luck in that we're definitely not fixing it because there is a huge hole in my oil pan and a couple of holes in the block. The rod said, knock, knock, who's there? He's out on the track somewhere. So yeah, I don't know what we're gonna do about it yet. We gotta get it home and tear the whole thing apart. It's a disappointment, but I'm excited. This was a blast. I did a 156, which is faster than I expected to go this weekend, and knocking on the door of kind of my first benchmark of 155 for the car. And I was set up to do an even faster lap. This thing is just gonna be a rocket ship as I get more and more comfortable in it. I think that if I could run the rest of the day today, and if I could run tomorrow, I think it's pretty clear cut. I think I could run a 55, maybe even a 54. So unfortunately, we won't find out until we replace the engine, and probably a ton of other stuff in the engine bay because now it's all full of engine parts. So yeah, I guess that's racing. Trying to stay in good spirits. Time to get back to the track. Back to the track. Time to get back to the shop and tear it apart. We'll see how it goes. We'll catch you guys in the next one. So I'm 0-2 for making it through events with the Ferrari. Not the best start, but not unexpected for such a fresh build that I'm asking a lot out of. I don't even want to think about what replacing this engine's going to cost because I'm still paying off that transmission I had to buy in Australia. But despite having such a catastrophic failure and having our weekend cut short, I'm still somehow having a blast. This feels like everything we built this car to do, and despite the hardships, I'm still motivated as ever to get this car fixed and get it back out on the track because I know it's going to be an absolute rocket ship. I'm just grateful that all of my friends were present to support me once things went south, and that you guys have been present along with this wild journey as we work to make this car better and faster. But we're not quite done yet. We waited around until the end of the day for the track to go cold and for the event to come to a close, because we knew it might be our only opportunity to go out there as a crew and find the end of that rod. There's nothing I can use it for, but I certainly want it as a memento because if anything, no matter how much it sucks, blowing up my car at an event seems like a rite of passage. With the light fading by the minute, but equipped with phones and a few flashlights, we scoured the sides of the track where the Ferrari blew up, hoping to find some shimmering glint of metal in the dirt. It felt like a long shot, like finding a needle in a haystack, because it could be anywhere at this point. But despite blowing up my engine, I suppose I hadn't used up all of my luck for the day, because with just moments of light left, by sheer chance, I spotted it. We decided we'd wander around the track now that it's cold, and we actually found the bottom half of cylinder 4. So, or rod number 4 at least. It is barely recognizable. I've never seen one do this. I don't know how this happened. It's split down the middle, clearly shorn in the end. It's like folded in half. The bolts are snapped off inside of it. I mean, it's pissed. So, yeah, well, I'm eager to see what the inside of the motor looks like, but I think we've got a problem.
This hitting this sent it through itself. The webbing punched it through the backside.
That's insane.
Where exactly did you find it? Like in this zone?
Yeah.
Was it bright and shiny like you would think?
Yeah, it was pretty obvious.